Hey folks, my name is Pravus and welcome to more Plague Inc. Evolved as we continue our series of Mega Brutal guides. And today we have landed on the Prion, in my opinion, one of the trickiest disease types to master. And that's because it seems to have been specifically designed to trip up people who think they know what they're doing. There are a couple of unique mechanics for the Prion that you have to watch out for. First off, there is a strange delay effect. So let's say you pick up a lethal symptom, normally it would kick in pretty much right away. But with the Prion, it may take several weeks before you claim your first victim. This means that the timing of everything gets thrown off, and you have to take some risks. Do you evolve Necrosis, hoping that the timing will work out and you will get into Greenland, or do you wait until everything is secure, but then your lethality doesn't kick in fast enough, and then you possibly have just cost yourself the game? That's the kind of stuff you have to worry about. There's also a new mechanic called the genetic shift, not to be confused with a genetic drift. The genetic shift is a random event that will increase or decrease the cost of your symptoms. And more often than not, it's going to increase the costs, so that means that by the end of the run, you may find that total organ failure is prohibitively expensive and completely out of your reach, and you run out of gas. That is also a problem. Plus, the Prion is very slow to kill, even if you have a decent lethality score. You will still find you do not kill the world very quickly, which means there's a lot of cure time. But on the plus side, the Prion is very difficult to cure, so you do find you have a bit more time to work with. In fact, in real life, the Prion is impossible to cure and guaranteed lethal. But that's not perfectly reflected in this game. As far as our genetics, we will be picking up a TP boost for reasons I'll explain in just a bit, plus Darwinist, because evolutions can make or break this particular run on Mega Brutal. Aquasite, Extremophile, and Symptostasis, no explanation really needed, and we'll go ahead and call this Desert Assault because, of course, we will be starting in Saudi Arabia. Though I have seen some people recommend starting in India or China for this one, because with the large population pool, you can get some early DNA from so many people infected that, you end up maybe picking up some early symptoms before they increase in cost due to the genetic shift. Though, assuming the genetic drift still applies, and it is kind of hard to prove that since everything increases in cost anyway, I would say that that's probably still not worth it, but it is something you could try. Now, one thing we're going to do that's different here, we are going to go for symptoms right off the bat, but mainly I want to pick up a lot of cheap symptoms. Anything that would get mutated and only save me 2 DNA is not very useful. I would rather pick up everything that is cheap so that only expensive things can get mutated and save me a lot of DNA. Also, I'd rather pick up the cheap stuff while it is cheap, because the genetic shift could make something that costs 2 points cost like 8 or 10 or whatever, right? I don't have the exact number, but you get the idea. I have seen that happen. We're going to start with the rash, the sweating, and the skin lesions. Really no difference there. And then I'm going to go for coughing, sneezing, and then nausea and vomiting. The reason why is we're going to be trying to take advantage of some of the combos that are in the game. Things like sneezing and vomiting can lead to a projectile vomiting combo, which can get you a fair bit of extra infectivity for no extra cost. Now, be aware that some of these combos can actually work against you. So, for example, if you pick up diarrhea and insanity, there is a chance that you draw a lot of unexpected attention to your disease, and that actually ends up hurting you more than it helps. So we want to be pretty intentional about what we pick up. I do recommend vomiting and sneezing, and then I do recommend the skin lesions and Haemophilia. Now, that will create the profuse bleeding combo, which does slightly increase lethality, which can be a little bit on the dangerous side, but I think it's going to end up being fine. Let's go ahead and pick up the cysts and the abscesses and the hypersensitivity. Then we're going to go for probably the anemia and hemophilia next. Notice everything's really cheap right now. Symptostasis is working out beautifully for me. We're taking advantage of this. Hopefully we see some of these combos popping up. It doesn't always kick in immediately, but sometimes it does. Now, we don't have to go for insomnia and paranoia yet. It's just really a severity increase. I've got lots of severity. That doesn't concern me too much. Let's pick up pneumonia over here as well. And now I can move back over to some transmissions. I guess I could pick these up just to guarantee we don't mutate something, but I think this is a reasonable chance. Odds are I will save like 10 or 17 DNA, not 2. So we'll go with that. I'm going to go for some transmissions next just to help us get around a little bit faster because I am trying to go fast here. We do want to get very high infectivity very early on if we can, so I can then get into every island and hopefully time out things like the necrosis, like the total organ failure pretty well. Well, we did just get necrosis for free. All right, I've not actually had this happen. I'm going to run with it. I'm going to run with it and see if the necrosis works. Notice no one's dead yet. So even though we did get some lethality, that's probably fine, maybe? I don't know. I'm going to try it. I have a feeling that I just cost myself the run by doing this, but for science, on camera, I'm going to give this one a go and see if maybe the necrosis is slow enough to kill that it doesn't end up costing me the game. So we're going to go for all of our air and all of our water, then we're going to pop over here and go for some drug resistance while everything's cheap, try to go for drug resistance level 2 to get into places like the United States, Europe, China, and so on a fair bit faster. Then, of course, our standard cold resistances that you're used to seeing at this point. 26 DNA. It is increasing in cost. Yeah, that genetic shift is starting to kick in now. Or drift, actually. Sorry, I think that's the drift and not the shift. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. Let's go ahead and pick this up. So now we have all of our cold resistances. So we've got all that we need there. I could pick up Extreme Bioaerosol. I think that at some point this is becoming kind of optional. I've heard some people say that Extreme Bioaerosol is not actually all that great. I think it's still worth picking up because even a small chance on getting on an island is worth it, in my opinion. But then beyond that, now we want to slow down things like the cure. We're going to do that by mainly going to some symptoms. I'm going to go for insomnia and paranoia. We're going to go for paralysis. We're going to go for coma while things are still affordable and before that genetic shift kills me. All right? Even though I know this is some lethality, kicking in will be slow. And this is going to slow down the cure. Now, one cool thing about the Prion is it does come with some special abilities. Mainly, it comes with neural atrophy. This is another way of slowing down the cure, and there's 3 levels to this. So between neural atrophy 3 and genetic hardening 2, plus things like the paralysis, the coma, eventually seizures and insanity, you can actually slow down the cure a lot as the Prion. It's actually very, very, very hard to cure, which is great for us. So let's just go ahead and pick those up now before they increase in cost too much further. Italy is leading the global cure effort. Never seen that happen before, but that's fine. I'm just slowing everything down, all right? We're killing pretty quickly. I am nervous because I think we're not going to get into Greenland and the Caribbean. If this does work, well, hang on. No, Russia and Norway just shut down their ports. I'm pretty confident we've lost. If this works and we somehow have another port that I'm not thinking of that gets in there, this will be an unbelievably good score for us, but I do not think that this worked. No, I can see all the ports that I care about already closed down. No, okay, so we've definitely lost this one. I'll restart. So my thought here was just like, if this works, it'll be amazing on camera. But okay, I'm going to go ahead and follow the exact same build order, nothing different. Give me 1 minute to come back to where I was. Oh my god, this time around we mutated insomnia. That is the worst thing that could have happened there. We just saved 2 DNA. Oh, no. All right, let's just go with it anyway and pray that that doesn't come back to bite me. Okay. I think there is a very good argument to go for something like bird or even insect in this particular scenario for transmissions. Mainly because it increases your mutation chance just a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. And every little bit of mutation can help you a lot in this particular run. So, I mean, that is a thing you could do. I don't find that it's necessary. It's not very consistent, but it can help. Go ahead and pick up our drug resistance now that we have air level 1 and 2 and water level 1 and 2. And by the way, for those of you who can get frustrated because I restart a video and maybe you were taking notes on like the build order, if you don't know, I do include the build order in the description for each of my videos on this, so just follow that along and you should be fine. There's the profuse bleeding right there, so a tiny bit of lethality comes out of that one for free. It's not much, I'm not worried about it, and you get a pretty good amount of extra infectivity out of that arrangement as well. But that little bit of extra lethality actually I think does kick in immediately, which is unique for the Prion, so there we go. Alright, so now that we have all of our resistances, we'll cycle back to the Extreme Bioaerosol, then we're going to focus on a few more symptoms. I'm going to go ahead and pick up the paranoia, the paralysis, and the coma while it's only 22 DNA, which is not half bad. Then we'll come back here and start slowing down the cure. They've only just really started working on the cure, which is why the timing of this tends to work out pretty well. That's why I'm willing to be a little bit aggressive and go for the coma. The lethality will be slow to kick in, so I'm not really feeling scared of that. What are we missing, by the way? New Zealand, of course, and Greenland. Right, all right. Well, go ahead and pick up the neural atrophy. We'll start working down that genetic hardening. We got into New Zealand. It's just a question of can we fast get into Greenland? We did! All right, perfect. So now we have a choice to make. What do we want to do as far as our remaining DNA? I could go for genetic hardening level 2, but at 44 DNA, it's now gotten a little bit crazy. I would normally advise picking this up, but the cost has become kind of prohibitive. What I can do instead is pick up total organ failure now. Again, the lethality will be slow to kick in, but I think it's going to be worth it before this gets too expensive. Let's do it. And then also cycle back and try to pick up necrosis before that gets too expensive as well. Everything kind of now comes down to a bit of speed. It's increased up to 44. There we go. All right, now we can pick it up. So we're looking pretty good here. All right, so I can go for genetic hardening next if I want to at this point, though, or obviously the earlier you pick that up, usually the better as far as slowing down the cure. But in this case, it was just too expensive. It should not have cost that much under normal circumstances. cases it wouldn't have. And in this case, I just looked at that and was like, well, that seems terrible. Now it's 54 DNA. Just to slow down a cure a little bit, I think we're just going to have to live with it. We can go ahead and pick up these seizures and work toward insanity at 32 DNA. That is not half bad. And then after that, it doesn't really matter too much what you pick up. What you want to do, now it's 33, what you want to do is go for as much lethality as you can, because again, even though we have a very decent lethality score right now, everything is really slow. Like really, really, really slow. So, yeah, even this cure is going to be a little bit on the scary side for me, because even though we've slowed it down quite a lot, it's just going to be taking so long to kill off the cure progress, we may be in trouble. Now, we could go for genetic reshuffles. That is an option. I can hold off until the very last minute and try to set it back. You know, as people die, right, hopefully the cost goes down a little bit. Let the mutation carry me from here. Hemorrhagic shock is actually a pretty decent pickup. That's very, very lethal. So I'm actually quite happy to have picked that up. I am going to change the build order up here a little bit and just go straight for the genetic reshuffles. I would normally say go for any symptoms, especially anything that's cheap that still remains, like maybe pick up the inflammation or the pulmonary edema, not just because it gives you a little lethality, but also because if you're going to mutate something, you want to mutate something that's expensive. That said, right now the costs are not looking too insane, and you can see here the genetic shuffle has actually decreased from 44 DNA down to 33. So it's becoming a little bit more affordable for us right now, so we're just going to hold off, pick up some of this DNA, we're just going to sit back, we're going to wait. At this point, the cure should be mostly destroyed. I'm not feeling very worried about it. Keep an eye on that. It's now down to 28 DNA. Okay, just waiting for people to die, and then we'll pick that up. The Walking Dead symptom combo, I think, yeah, insomnia and anemia. This one is nice in that, yeah, it does slow down the cure a little bit, so it's not a bad thing to get. It's also very, very cheap, right? You can pick these two up pretty easily. Combos are a thing I don't make use of a lot, I think, in Plague Inc. Like, I don't build around them. But they can be pretty decent, and they're usually fairly cheap and easy to pick up, especially if you have symptostasis. So really, nothing to worry about there. Projectile vomiting only just now kicked in, which is where I was saying before, it doesn't always happen immediately, that combo. Sometimes there's a little bit of luck involved there as well. All right, let's go ahead and just devolve this a little bit, get rid of that cure progress. It goes down to 51%, acceptable. Yeah, it's okay. We'll pick up, let's say, dysentery, and we'll pick up systemic infection, pulmonary fibrosis, whatever, it doesn't matter. We're going for disease complexity right now just to try and get a little bit of extra score, but it's too late in the game now for that to kick in and help boost up my lethality. So we're not actually going to get any stat boost here, and that's where the Prion becomes so weird. But in this case, it's all right. Like, we did mutate, in this case, insomnia. We could have mutated something with lethality. As long as it's not something insane, like maybe the necrosis we had before, it's not so bad. You can live with, let's say, immune suppression or pulmonary edema mutating for free. Tiny bit of lethality, probably won't cost you a run, not worth devolving. But there's a bit of luck involved with that. We did get 4 stars. All right, that's not bad. 513 days is acceptable for us. 52% cure progress. Overall, I feel like that was pretty decent. Like, we got a very unlucky mutation, and we still ultimately walked away with the win. So if you follow this build order, I think it's a fairly consistent way of getting in. Just understand, like, if you try to use the same build orders that you had from the bacteria, virus, parasite, whatever, it's probably not going to work. The Prion does require a pretty different approach. It's just a weird disease type. It's meant to trip you up, but we did manage to get through it, no problem at all. Thank you all very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed and found this helpful. If so, I would ask you hit that like button, leave a comment, subscribe, hit that notify bell, and I will see you guys next time.